While you're in raid and escape from Tarkov, there are all sorts of loot you need to worry about. You got to worry about making money, gearing up, quest items, all sorts of things like that. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is there's some specific loot out there that it's quest items, but more specifically, it's the gunsmith items. That if you pick them up, not only are they going to save you a bunch of money, they'll actually open up some of these tasks long before you're able to do them on the traders. Now, the whole point of this video is I'm just going to go through and show you kind of the rare parts, or not so much the rare parts, but the very specific ones you have to have in order to get these tasks done. This way you can recognize the parts, you can pick them up, you can put them in your secure container because they don't need to be found in raid for them to be valuable to you, and you can get these tasks done, as well as know what items, especially weapon parts, are worth a ton of money throughout most of the wipe. Because all of these items that are kind of rare, because you're saving money by getting them out of raid and doing your tasks that way, later on, once the task's done, if you get them out found in raid, they're worth more money than your average weapon part or equal weapon part because they're specifically asked for in a gunsmith task. Now, there's a couple of things I want to touch on before we get into the video. First off, if you get your traders high enough, like if you basically get to level 3 and 4 peacekeeper, mechanic, and skier, you can do all of these with barters or purchasing, so you don't have to worry about it. So if you wait to do your gunsmith tasks, not a big deal. If you're low level, however, this can give you a huge bonus to XP, get you leveled up, and give you access to some weapon parts you might not yet have, as some of these tasks actually unlock specific weapons or barters or parts. Now, not all of these parts can go in your secure container, but most of them can. So if you find them, it's worth taking out your CMS or your Grizzly or your Salewa that can all be easily replaced and put one of these parts in that can sell north of 100 or 200K a piece if you don't have traders. Now, sourcing these parts isn't too hard. I run customs most of the start of wipes, and I find a majority of my parts there. So you don't have to run anywhere crazy or run into some raiders or go fight scav bosses to get these, though those are great sources as well. So looting is number one. But you can get tons of these weapons and parts off of raiders, rogues, and cultists now. But scav bosses are an awesome way to source, especially Reshala. You can get a bunch of these AK parts that you need and the guns you need specifically from Reshala's AK and his goons. Then on top of that, fighting like Killa or Tagilla, you can get 60 round mags that you need not only for ice cream cones, but for Gunsmith Part 2 and some of the later ones. But Gluhar and his goons drop 60 round M4 mags all the time, and you need those for sure for the later M4 tasks. All right, now I'm going to use the wiki for this to show you guys just because it's easier, but you can use this as a great source. Just keep in mind the wiki is not a Bible for most of these. It's a guide. You can modify parts. Sometimes if you get stuff out of raid that works, gives you the same stats or better stats, you can use that and use that to save you some money. So we're just going to talk real quick about Gunsmith Part 1. I've done a guide on this to talk about it as well, and I'll do guides on all of these eventually as we get through the wipe. I'm up to about 3 as I'm making this video, but we'll start cranking through them as I get higher level and show you not just the cheapest way, but sometimes the fastest or the lowest level way you can do these so you can get them through in a way that works for you. But nonetheless, Gunsmith Part 1, the big part you want to hang on to here is this GK02 muzzle brake. This is needed now to get Gunsmith Part 1 done unless they change it. So you can find these on shotgun scavs all the time. I find them in green weapon crates. You find them all over the spot. I think even Tagilla spawns with them on one of if he has a shotgun. So this is something really important. If you find it, stick it into your secure container because it's the only thing you can't get directly from traders until you get Jaeger level 2, and then you can buy it. But before that, if you want to get this done, that's the part you need that you can't find in raid. Now, Gunsmith Part 2 is the AK. This one isn't quite so complicated. All the parts are available except the 60 round, the 6L31. Now, this comes up at the same time as ice cream cones, right? So if you get ice cream cones done, you can barter for it with level 2 proper. Otherwise, you need to find it in raid. But the first one of these I find, I always put it in my secure container because it's really valuable for this gunsmith task. After that, you need found in raid 1, so it doesn't matter so much. But this is the key point for Gunsmith 2 that you want to keep an eye out for. And again, you can get them off of Killa, Tagilla. Sometimes raiders and stuff will have them. I always find mine looting. ZB14 on woods, things like that. You'll find them if you just look constantly enough. Now, Gunsmith Part 3 is at the same time one of the easier ones to do, but also one of the ones that's locked behind levels pretty much the hardest on the low level gunsmith tasks. So you pretty much have to have Peacekeeper 2 to even start this without spending a fortune on the flea market. But once you get Peacekeeper to level 2, you can pretty much buy most of the parts. But 2 things that you can keep an eye out for that will save you a ton of money is if you find a 50 round MP5 mag and this MP5 SD B&T tri-rail ring mount. This thing goes on the actual suppressor itself. If you find both of these in raid, get out with them because those are the 2 hardest things to get for this task if you're lower level. Once you get to Peacekeeper level 2, they're available and they're ready. But if you're trying to do this before then, or before you have those tasks done, or if you have an alpha account and you don't have the bonus to your rep, those are the 2 parts you're going to need. Now, I'm currently working through Gunsmith Part 4. This is the first one of the really complicated Gunsmith tasks you can do. And it's because there's about a dozen ways you can do this. It just depends on what parts you have. So with this, what I'm going to say really simply is if you find any high-end M4 parts. So if you find any good pistol grips, you know, buffer tubes, the MIR-1S upper, the different barrels, handguards, suppressors, anything like that you find you want that are high end, you want to hang on to those because they'll make these M4 tasks easier. Like I said, you don't necessarily need to build exactly how they do it. This is just one of the ways that you can get to it, access to the lowest level, but you're going to spend a bunch of money. Whereas if you're keeping parts, yeah, you can't sell them on the flea market and you lose that opportunity cost. But many of these mechanic tasks give you a ton of XP and money, so it's worth it in the long run. But this is where, like, the first time you're going to need either a D60 or the Stang 60 mag. You need either of those simply because you have to have a 60 round mag in them, but you can't get access to them until you have Peacekeeper level 3 or Mechanic level 3. So that's where fighting raiders comes in handy, or getting lucky and killing a player that has them on them, and make sure you secure that away. It's worth more than paying for the mag itself, and those are going to be the expensive parts here outside of some of the others. Now, Gunsmith Part 5 is probably one of the most straightforward ones that you have to do here as far as getting parts. But the two that are big to hang on to if you find is a 34mm scope. Any scope rings, these right here, any of these that you find, you're good to hang on to. Just hang on to those 34mm scope rings. Any of them work. If it says 34mm, put it away because you can use it. Then next up, you need the Night Force scope. So you'll find those, you get them in tasks sometime. It's a loyalty level 2 barter from Jaeger, but it's kind of expensive. You might be better off just buying it. So if you do find a Night Force, keep in mind that you need it for this Gunsmith 5 task. Now, Gunsmith Part 6 is a whole different animal. There's a lot of parts that you need for this, but I'm kind of going to gloss over those and talk primarily about the RSAS, especially now that the RSAS is banned from the flea market. You can't buy it. So you only have a couple of ways to get a hold of one of these, and many of them depend on luck. So the first one is mark rooms. Probably the most common place you're going to find one in the world is just looting lots of mark rooms. It's where we find most of them, but if you get it, run for the hills with it because you need it to get through this task. If you've already got it and you can't do anything with it, maybe you can help a buddy out, or you run raids with it and somebody kills you and they're like, oh my god, I got an RSAS now. Other than that, they're not worth much anymore. They used to be worth millions of rubles when they were on the flea market, but as of right now, they're banned. So marked rooms is the first way I would suggest getting them. One of the lower chances, but the places that I've seen them the most common, is West Wing 218 in Resort on Shoreline. It's a red key card room. Now you can access it from any of the 3 rooms on that side. So it's 218, 221, and 222. Any of those keys, you only have to have one of them. You can access all 3 rooms through the balconies. But in 218, the red key card room, in the bathroom, there's some boxes. You can find RSASs on there. At least we have in the past. Haven't found any this wipe yet, but it's a place to keep an eye out for. After that, you have a barter with Peacekeeper, loyalty level 3. It requires 8 bear tags of level 15 or higher, or 8 USEC tags of level 15 or higher. So probably one of the easier ways to source it out of everything out there, or the earliest if you don't get lucky and find it in a raid. Now you can also purchase this from loyalty level 4 Peacekeeper once you get Wet Job Part 5 done. Once you get that task done, it unlocks it and you can just purchase it straight from him. But that's a long ways down the road. So if you're willing to wait to do your Gunsmith task, great, because you'll buy that and you'll be able to buy most of these parts and not even have to worry about it going forward. But if you're eager and you want to get it done sooner, this is not going to be helpful for you. Now after that, it's just looting crates. You know, the gray, green, black weapon boxes. You loot those, you can find RSASs in them. It's rare, but they do turn up. I've heard rumors that they show up in the standing weapon safes, weapon cabinets. I don't know what you want to call them. I've never seen one in there. I've never seen actual proof. I've just heard people talk about it. So it takes 2 seconds to open those doors up and look inside, and sometimes you find other guns anyways. But that's it for pretty much the RSAS. The rest of the parts you can just about buy for the Gunsmith task, especially when you get to the level where you can do this. Usually you're in your mid 20s to low 30s, and you can buy all these parts or barter for them. So not going to really bring them up. You can come look at the wiki if you want to get more detail on that. Now, part 7 is a model 870 shotgun you have to modify, and there's 2 specific parts here for it that if you find in raid, it's a home run. If not, you need to have mechanic loyalty level 2 for a barter. And the first one is this 870 Magpul MOE handguard. Now you got to keep an eye out. There's a couple of different handguards out there that kind of look like this. It's specifically the 870 MOE handguard. And that's the one you want to stick right in your secure container. And then after that is the 870 polymer stock. So that's what you're looking for. If it says 870 on it and it's Magpul, you want to keep it because you're going to need it for this task. Gunsmith Part 8 is pretty simple. There's only 2 parts you need to worry about for this one, but they can be hard to find. And the first one is the Fortis Shift Tactical Grip. Not only is this a meta grip and it's great, but you can't get it till you're Peacekeeper 4. It usually sells for somewhere between 500 or 50 and 100,000 rubles on the flea market, but you can stick it in your secret container when you find it. I've found a couple of these so far. I've died with most of them, so I've got a bunch of non-found in raid. I'll use them eventually anyways, but I have them covered for this task now. On top of that, and it's not necessarily a requirement, but it's the most common one you're going to see, especially on like boss AKs and Raider AKs and stuff like that, is the RK3. So if you get RK3s out of raid, stock up on them because you need 3, 4, 5 of them for all. They're helpful for 3 or 4 or 5 of the tasks in the Gunsmith task line. So if you have a couple of them, it just makes the life a little bit easier, not just for Gunsmith Part 8. Now, Gunsmith Part 9 doesn't have super specific parts. You can buy most of these things cheap, but one thing I want to bring up for 9 is the Rashala's Guards AKs. They very often they come with these Zenit, basically Zenited out. They might not have the PT3 stock on them. You can get those off of some other AKs as well, but the dust cover, the DTK1 muzzle brake, and the handguard, all 3 of those, along with the RK3, which we talked about, you bring that whole AK out and you've got 90% of the weapon ready to go. So that's what we were talking about earlier about scav bosses. So for Part 9, it's basically kill Rashala and keep one of his goons AKs and you're golden, one of the 545 AKs. Now, Part 10, really quickly, we'll talk about it. Same kind of deal. It's Rashala's AKs. So if you get out with 2 Rashala guard AKs, you're going to be well on your way to having Gunsmith 9 and 10 done. The big thing for 10 to bring up is, again, you need more of the 6L31 60 round mags, but hopefully by now you can just buy them or barter from them. You're not trying to find them in raid. If you have one, great. It saves you that little bit of money. But also the hybrid suppressor and the RK3, again. The hybrid suppressor, there's a barter with mechanic loyalty level 2 that's really cheap. You should be doing that anyways. But outside of that, there's nothing else for Gunsmith 10. Now, on the other end of this spectrum, we have Gunsmith Part 11, and this is where almost all of the parts are important that you need to keep an eye out for. There are options for barters for these, but if you want to get it done sooner, there's a few parts you really need to keep an eye out for. And we'll start off with the GL Shock buttstock. Find these quite a bit. You'll find them on Rashala guards if they have the 8R, other places like that. If you get your hands on one of these, hang on to it. It's a mechanic loyalty level 2 barter that's not too expensive. It's a thing of WD-40, but having it makes it easier. Plus, you can sell it for quite a bit of money. The second one is the 30 round mags. These can be hard to get a hold of. There is a barter with loyalty level 3 proper to do them, but you can find them in raid quite frequently, just sitting around. So if you pick one up, save it for this task. Next up is the TP29 mount or the Zenit B3 ring mount. You can find these in raided. In either of these work for what you're doing here. But again, if you find them in raid, it means you can do them before you get Jaeger level 3 or Skier loyalty level 3, and you can get this task done. And then lastly, the Rotor 43 pistol grip. Now, on mechanic loyalty level 2, there's a barter for this that everybody skips over. It's a thing of milk, but these things can't be bought. They're not sold by any of the traders. So people usually just go right to the market. They don't even see there's a barter, and they'll pay 100, 150, 200,000 rubles for one of these. And you don't need to. Pack of milk, loyalty level 2 mechanic, or find it in raid. If you find one in raid, it's a gold mine. What I'll do is if I've already got mechanical loyalty level 2, so if I find these, I sell them all day long. I make videos and tell people to do barters, but I'll still make money off of them if they don't watch my videos. It's kind of a win-win for me. But yeah, that's the last one for Gunsmith Part 11. Now, Part 12 gets into some of the very specific items you need to keep. You have to find these in raid. Some of them are easier than others, but you see them, you want to stick them in your secure container right away. So for Part 12, the first one we're going to talk about is the OD green, olive drab Magpul AFG grip. So this guy right here. Let me make it actually bigger so you can see it. You see these Magpul AFG grips all the time. They're in a bunch of different colors. This one is not the M-Lock. It's the one that attaches to rails specifically, but you want the one that says AFG OD on it. And it's specifically called out in the Gunsmith task. If you look in the text here, he wants this and Magpul AFG OD tactical grip. On top of that, he wants the Zenit Clash 2 flashlight. So that's the other one we're going to talk about. You'll find these all over the place. They're not rare, but people just don't realize they need to keep them, and you can't buy them to loyalty level 3 mechanic, so it makes them really expensive. And then lastly is the Rotor 43556 suppressor. Best place to source these is Rashala. You'll get them off of his AK, but you can find them in raid and things like that. I've gotten 3 this wipe, and I've given 2 of them to friends of mine, so they don't have to go into raid with them. They don't have to be found in raid. Give it to them. They leave. Everybody's hunky dory. They've got their really hard suppressor to get a hold of. but that is the best place that I found to get him, is Rashala's AK usually has it on there. Other places you can get it as well, but that's going to be the other big one you need for Gunsmith Part 12. Like Part 12, Gunsmith Part 13 has some very specific items you need to keep, and they're not all that hard to find if you're just keeping an eye out for them, but you got to know what you're looking for. And the first one's the Annihilator. So the Annihilator is this really unique looking muzzle brake right here, right? But you need that for this task. It specifically asks for it. On top of that, you need the AR-15 Tactical Dynamics Skeletonized Pistol Grip. Now, if you go look skeletonized on the flea market, you're going to see there's a bunch of different kinds now. You need this one specifically. Don't grab one of the other ones because it says skeletonized and think you're good. You need this one. I find a couple, usually every wipe, just loot and weapon crates and open world weapon part spawns, you know, top of reserve and stuff like that. Great source for those. And then lastly is this Steiner Lays Tac-2 Tactical Flashlight. These aren't hard to find, but people don't know what they're looking for many times. They spawn on scav shotguns, scav boss guns. You see them all over the place. And you need one, but you can't buy it till mechanic loyalty level 3, which means they're expensive on the flea market. So if you find one of these, if you're running a scav or you kill a scav, make sure you throw at least one of these in your secure container at one point and save it, because you're going to need it for this task. Now for Gunsmith Part 14, this AKM, it's basically a Magpul AKM. But the two really important things you need to get are the AK Magpul MOE AKM handguard. It's got to be black. And then the M-Lock AFG tactical grip, which also has to be black. They're very common. You're going to see them all the time in raids, but they are expensive because they are specifically needed for this, and they are locked behind loyalty level 3 traders. So they don't take up any space. It takes up one slot. You can put the AFG tactical grip on the handguard, and it takes up one slot, and you're ready to go. But just make sure you're keeping an eye out for those, so when you get here, you have them ready to go, throw on the gun. And then you also need the Rotor 43762 muzzle brake. Source these all over the place. Raiders, scav bosses, boxes, cultists, rogues. These are very common on harder to kill bosses, but just make sure if you get one, you're saving it, because it's very specifically called out. The Rotor 43762x39 muzzle brake, which is a suppressor. And then the last one we're going to talk about is 15. I know there's Gunsmith Part 16, but it's a whole can of worms on its own, not suited for this video. And by the time you're there anyways, you need to be higher level to do it. But for 15, there's two important parts to keep an eye out for, especially the Ultimac M8. This thing right now, it's probably running about 100 to 150,000 rubles. I see this push to 250,000 all the time. Sometimes you can't even find it on the flea market. Now, it does have a loyalty level 2 barter with mechanic, so it's there. But if you're trying to get this done before you get mechanic to loyalty level 2, this is one of the key parts you're going to need. And then on top of that is the UTG-4. I see these frequently on reserve. People run over them all the time, but I like it because you can put scopes on it, and it makes it like if you find a Valde or something in raid, I can put it on the UTG-4 and it shrinks it down to a 1 slot, you know, super loot rat trick kind of things. But make sure you put that in your secure container when you find it, because you also need it for this task. So that's the two parts, the Ultimac M8 and the UTG-4 4-point locking deluxe mount thingy-majig. Now, a couple of quick things I just want to run by you really quick. Quick pointers, tips, however you want to look at it. Outside of the very specific called parts, like the GL Shock or the Shift Grip or the M8, right? Meta parts work great. So even if you find Stangs or D60s, keep them. RK3s or any of the other the grips that do 12 or 13 or 14 ergo, it doesn't matter what gun they're for, AKs or M4s, keep them, because they will help you in these gunsmith tasks. That's why I've got this mini monster in here right now. It's going to be part of one of the builds I do for the Part 4 task to show you just how to do it. So just because it's a meta part and it's worth a lot of money, keep in mind that it might be worth more to you trying to get tasks done. It's entirely a personal decision. Now, the best two places I find for sourcing these parts are all the roofs on reserve. Whether you're, even as a player scav, you can find stuff because players just run by all this stuff. So Black Knight, the bishops, pawn buildings, you find all these weapon parts just randomly scattered around. Pick them up, get out of raid, and you're 10 times ahead of most of everybody else. And I'm going to beat on it again. Barters, barters, barters. If you go look in mechanics specifically, he has so many barters that are related to gunsmith tasks. You've got the MP5, the GL Shock. You know, here's the shotgun thing. Here's the M8 thing for the Part 15. All of these are in here because the gunsmith tasks. That's why they're here. So you can barter for them and not have to spend a bunch of money. You can get a part kind of cheap and do it. Some of them are expensive barters. Some of them are cheaper barters. Keep in mind that they're all here. And then lastly, I'm going to say it again. One of my favorite people to kill for gunsmith is Rashala. I swear you probably can get 60 to 70% of the things you need to finish all of your gunsmith tasks from Reshala by himself. All of the different AKs that he has, like his AK-102, the AK-74s that you can get from his guards, and all the parts they have on there, they're a huge help. And on top of that, what a lot of people don't realize is they'll pull off the foregrips, they'll pull off the flashlights, the sights, the muzzle brakes, and they'll leave the gun. But what they don't realize is that handguard and that dust cover are worth, you know, 150,000 combined to them, especially later in wipe when more and more people get into this. So those AKs are a great source of money off of Reshala. He's an easier boss to kill, and if you get out with guns and stuff, you can make an absolute fortune off of your raid. But that's pretty much the video. I hope this is helpful. I hope it makes your gunsmith tasks a lot easier. We're going to keep grinding out doing the very specific gunsmith tasks to help you get them done and help them get them built with this new wipe with 1212. But with that, we'll wrap it up. I wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you in Tarkov.